Today, I learned about the phenomenon of observing intimacy between individuals. The French guy has been staying in my apartment for the past few days. I gave him a couple of days at most. However, 2 days eventually became 3 days, and the third day was literally yesterday, which is when the French invasion finally came to an end. This was never part of my plan, especially after the events of my previous post. But the French guy showed up at my apartment following yet another explosive argument with his ex-girlfriend and asked me if I was willing to make him my temporary roommate for a day or two because being roommates with his ex-girlfriend was not exactly, how do you say, peaceful, right? The French guy had enough social awareness to at least acknowledge how inappropriate it was to expect anything from me, considering the fact that A, we hardly knew each other, and B, based on our recent history, I knew enough about the roller coaster he called a relationship to not want any part of it. But apparently, all of the people he used to call friends were supposedly friends with his ex-girlfriend first, which made him feel like he had zero support and nowhere to go, so he decided to make his problem our problem. I was reluctant to get involved, but he seemed very vulnerable, and I was too weak to tell a heartbroken man to go away, so I made him promise me that he would be gone in 2 days. As you know, it was more than 2 days. It was 3 long days of feeling like I made a mistake. Let me explain. Day 1 asterisk. The French guy not only decided to cook for me towards the end of the day, but he also seemed to enjoy listening to me complain about work. It actually would have been a surprisingly wholesome first day if the French guy didn't feel the need to joke about getting an erection from hearing me use big English words to describe my responsibilities at work. I awkwardly called it a night as soon as it became clear to me that one of us did indeed have a notable physical reaction that was very hard to miss. Day 2 asterisk. The French guy convinced me to join him for an early morning run. Along the way, he approached different girls on the street and thickened his already thick French accent before saying, "If I can prove I have your name on my butt, can I please get your number?" If the girls said yes, which most of them did, the French guy would reveal the words "your name" tattooed on his butt cheek. It was kind of embarrassing, not going to lie, but he would get a laugh out of the girls, as well as their number. One of the girls happened to be someone I had a small crush on back in high school. She was too focused on the French guy to notice me struggling to catch my breath in the background, let alone recognize or remember me, which obliterated what little self-confidence I had left by the time we were done running. Day 3 asterisk. Also known as yesterday. The French guy was supposed to leave, but instead of saying goodbye, he asked for an extension. An extension with an incentive. The French guy said if I allowed him to stay for just one more day, he could arrange to have intimate relations in front of me with someone who was not his ex-girlfriend, if, of course, that was still a fantasy I wanted to explore. I said it was too soon after what happened last time, which prompted him to pull out his phone and show me borderline adult content photos on social media of an attractive girl who was apparently open to a physical encounter while being watched. According to the French guy, she was just like him. An exhibitionist. One of many exhibitionists the French guy claimed he knew. I automatically stopped thinking logically after seeing what the girl looked like and instructed the French guy to pull whatever strings he had to make that happen. The French guy confirmed that the girl confirmed that she was free to meet at 7 o'clock in the evening. Fast forward to 7 o'clock in the evening. The French guy made dinner. I made sure the apartment was spotless. Both of us looked our best, but it was only the two of us. And it stayed the two of us long enough for me to begin wondering if the French guy really arranged to have intimate relations with someone, or if he was just willing to say anything to be my unofficial roommate for another day. What made me doubt his intentions even more was the fact that he was constantly feeding me. Literally. He would put a spoonful of whatever in my mouth every time he saw an opportunity. I never hated what I tasted. He is an excellent cook, but based on how day one ended, it was unclear if there was, something a little bit odd going on. I gradually gave up when it was almost 9 o'clock, and there was still no girl. Whenever I asked the French guy if she was still coming, he would end up calling or messaging her before telling me that she was not responding. I decided to finish my dinner and go to bed. A few minutes after 10 o'clock, the French guy knocked on my door and informed me that the girl actually showed up. Against my better judgment, I got out of bed without changing out of my pajamas and left my room to meet the girl. I was more in the mood for sleep than to watch people have intimate relations, but the girl was very apologetic about being late and seemed eager to get going. Her looks and enthusiasm overshadowed the long list of random reasons she had for disappearing on the French guy and showing up hours late, so I thought, you know what, let's just go. The girl took the lead when everyone agreed to proceed. She made me understand that it was very unusual for something like this to happen in such an impromptu way, but she owed the French guy a favor, so she was willing to go with the flow and skip straight to intimacy. Speaking of intimacy, there was, yet again, no intimacy. During foreplay, specifically mid-oral stimulation, the French guy struggled to perform. It happens to the best of us, so I didn't judge, but it was painful to watch, especially when it became obvious that he was not going to be able to get it up no matter what the poor girl did. The French guy repeatedly said, "I am so sorry," and implied that his lack of performance was due to not being accustomed to having voyeuristic experiences with someone who was not his ex-girlfriend. When the girl heard ex-girlfriend, she stopped the oral stimulation and suggested that it might not be the worst idea to accept defeat and call it a night. Both the French guy with the issue and the naked girl, whose efforts were not enough, looked at me for the final decision. I took my hand out of my pants and gave them a lackluster thumbs up. The girl wasted no time getting dressed. As she was putting on her clothes as fast as possible, she praised me for being open enough to allow strangers to engage in intimate relations under my roof, even though the experience never happened. However, she also encouraged me to consider going to clubs that promote positive sexual experiences, where exhibitionism and voyeurism were allowed, because it would be much safer and would most likely be more successful than allowing strangers into my personal space, only for them to disappoint me or, worse, leave stains on my partner's gaming console. I never had a boyfriend or owned a gaming console, so I just assumed she was referring to an unpleasant experience she had in the past. There was no space for me to comment or ask questions or even react because her closing statement was that she had studying to do for an upcoming exam. So she was going to use the time she would have spent having an intimate encounter with a handsome French guy in front of a guy wearing pajamas as a sign that she should have just stuck to studying to begin with. Before saying goodbye, she advised the French guy to explore healthier ways to move on from his ex-girlfriend and reminded me about what she said about the sex club. The French guy left my apartment this morning. Our brotherly hug felt final. I'm not sure if I am going to see him again. I hope not. He is not a bad guy, but my life makes more sense without him in it, no offense to the French. To summarize, the French guy convinced me to let him stay at my place for a few days after his ex-girlfriend and current roommate was making his life unpleasant. His presence in my apartment came with a series of unfortunate events involving unexpectedly awkward moments between us, witnessing one of my high school crushes falling for the French guy's flirtations, and yet another attempt at watching people have intimate relations, only for it to end with the French guy unable to perform.